At the moment of death, everything changes. For the body, it's a sudden shift from life to stillness. The heart, which has been beating tirelessly since birth, stops its rhythmic pulsing. The breath that once filled the lungs now ceases, leaving an eerie silence. The body becomes still, no longer responding to the signals of the mind. It's as if, in an instant, life has evaporated, and the person is no longer there. But what happens next, the first few moments after death, are crucial. In many ways, they determine the early stages of the soul's journey. Some people report experiences of floating above their bodies, observing the scene around them and feeling detached from the physical form that once defined them. This is known as the out-of-body experience, and while it's a phenomenon that can't be scientifically measured or explained, countless individuals who have undergone near-death experiences speak of it with vivid clarity. The body, left behind and lifeless, is no longer a reflection of the person who once inhabited it. But where does the person go? On a biological level, the body begins to undergo rapid changes. Without the heartbeat pumping blood, the body's tissues are deprived of oxygen, and cells begin to break down. Rigor mortis sets in, stiffening the muscles, while the skin cools and loses its warmth. The blood that once flowed freely throughout the body begins to pool, leading to discoloration. These early signs of decomposition signal that the physical body is already starting to return to the earth. But despite all these changes, what's more mysterious and perhaps even more profound is what happens to the soul during these early moments. In spiritual teachings across cultures, the soul is often said to remain close to the body in the moments immediately following death, lingering between worlds. For some, this is a time of reckoning, a chance for the soul to reflect on its earthly existence. Others believe that it's the moment of transition, a time when the soul decides which path to take, whether it's ascending to a higher plane, moving on to a next life, or entering a state of peace. These beliefs vary greatly depending on religious or spiritual perspectives. But what is certain is that the soul's journey does not begin at some arbitrary moment after death. It begins the moment life leaves the body. Though science cannot yet fully explain what happens to consciousness after death, many cultures and spiritual beliefs speak of a journey that begins the moment life ceases. In some traditions, the soul is said to hover near the body, waiting for a signal to move on. In others, it's thought to take a journey to the afterlife, passing through stages of judgment, purification, or rest. Regardless of the specifics, the first few moments after death are seen as a pivotal time, a time of transition, not just for the body, but for the soul as well. The concept of the last breath is not just symbolic. It marks the dividing line between the physical world and whatever lies beyond. It is the point of no return, where the body ceases its functions and the soul begins its unknown path. After the heart stops, the body begins to undergo a series of changes that are both subtle and dramatic. The first few minutes after death are crucial in the biological process. Immediately following the cessation of the heartbeat, blood circulation halts, and within moments, the body begins to cool. The warmth that once emanated from the body quickly fades, and the skin becomes cold to the touch. This cooling process, known as rigor mortis, is a clear indication that life has left the body. The body, once a vessel of warmth and energy, now becomes an empty shell, slowly returning to the earth. At the same time, the muscles begin to stiffen in a process called rigor mortis. It usually begins a few hours after death, starting in the smaller muscles and then spreading throughout the larger ones. Rigor mortis occurs because the chemical processes in the body, which once allowed muscles to contract and relax, stop functioning. Without the energy needed to break the bonds between muscle fibers, they stiffen in place. The entire body becomes rigid, and what was once a flexible, responsive human form is now locked in a state of immobility. These early stages are followed by a rapid decline in cellular function. Cells that once thrived on oxygen, delivered by the circulatory system, begin to break down. Without oxygen, cells start to die off. The body starts to decompose from the inside out, and various enzymes that were previously contained within cells begin to break free, digesting the tissue around them. This process is known as autolysis, and it sets in as soon as the cell's life-sustaining functions stop. Within hours, the body will begin to show the first signs of decomposition. This is when the body starts to change visibly, as tissues soften and discoloration sets in. However, while the body undergoes these inevitable changes, the soul is often believed to be in a different state of transition. Many spiritual teachings claim that the soul lingers around the body, sometimes for up to 24 hours. During this period, it is thought to be unaware of its departure from the physical realm, lingering near the body, or even watching the events unfold from a distance. In some traditions, this is seen as a time for the soul to come to terms with its separation from the earthly existence it once knew. For others, it's the first step in a journey toward the afterlife, or another plane of existence. For those who have had near-death experiences, or who have been revived after clinical death, this period of time is often described as one of intense clarity. The feeling of leaving the body, observing the physical realm from above, or passing through a tunnel of light, is a common experience reported by those who have encountered death and returned. Many believe that the soul, during these moments, undergoes a profound realization of its eternal nature, no longer confined by the limitations of the human body. While the physical processes of decomposition continue, the soul's journey remains a deeply personal and spiritual matter. The transition from life to death, though marked by biological processes, is far from just a physical event. It's seen as a profound shift where the material and spiritual worlds intersect in a way that we cannot fully comprehend. As the body begins to decompose, the soul, in many beliefs, begins its journey, moving away from the physical realm and into something far greater, transcending time and space. The first 24 hours after death are often viewed as a critical period in both biological and spiritual terms. Physically, the body begins to undergo significant changes, marking the irreversible shift from life to death. The cooling of the body, the onset of rigor mortis, and the initial breakdown of cells continue to progress during these hours. The process of decomposition is still in its early stages, but the signs are unmistakable. The once vibrant and warm body now becomes a lifeless, cold form, signaling the end of its earthly existence. But spiritually, this time is seen as a significant moment for the soul, one that can shape its journey in profound ways. Many cultures and spiritual traditions believe that the soul is still close to the body during the first 24 hours. In some beliefs, it is said that the soul hovers around the deceased, reluctant to leave the familiar surroundings and loved ones behind. This period is often described as one of transition, where the soul may still be connected to its earthly life, perhaps unsure of what lies ahead. Some reports from those who have experienced near-death situations suggest that during the first day, the soul is conscious and aware, observing the events happening around it. It may see the grief of loved ones, hear conversations, and even interact with the living in ways that are difficult to explain. In other spiritual views, the first 24 hours are seen as a time of reflection. The soul, now detached from the physical body, may enter a space where it reviews its life, contemplating the choices made, the lessons learned, and the impact of its existence. This may be a time of deep introspection, where the soul is able to make peace with its past, find closure, and prepare for the next stage of its journey. Some religious teachings suggest that this is a time when the soul is weighed, evaluated, or cleansed before moving on to the afterlife. For those of faith, this period may also be marked by prayers, rituals, or blessings intended to guide the soul through its transition. In Christianity, for example, prayers are often said for the deceased, asking for God's mercy and grace to help the soul find peace and eternal rest. In other traditions, rituals such as lighting candles, chanting, or performing ceremonial acts may be done to assist the soul in its journey to the afterlife. These spiritual practices are rooted in the belief that the first 24 hours are crucial for the soul's journey, helping it cross over from the physical realm to whatever lies beyond. Biologically, as the hours pass, the body continues to change. The early signs of rigor mortis, which began just a few hours after death, continue to affect the muscles, making the body rigid. The skin becomes increasingly pale as blood circulation ceases, and the body starts to show the early signs of decomposition. While these changes are happening in the physical realm, the soul is believed to be in a state of flux, transitioning from one plane of existence to another, uncertain of its next destination. Some spiritual traditions describe this period as one where the soul may still have the chance to interact with the physical world, watching over its loved ones, but eventually it will be time for it to move on. In some teachings, this period of time is also seen as a critical point for the soul's journey toward judgment or final purification. For example, in many Christian beliefs, the soul's eternal fate is determined after death, with the first 24 hours possibly marking the beginning of this process. It's a time when the soul is believed to pass through spiritual gates, encounter angels or guides, and prepare for its final resting place, whether that be heaven, hell, or another realm. Whether one believes in the spiritual transition of the soul or simply views death through a scientific lens, the first 24 hours after death are undeniably significant. They represent not only the continued breakdown of the body, but also the beginning of a journey that transcends the physical realm. For the living, it's a time of mourning and reflection, but for the soul, it may be the beginning of a new chapter, one that brings with it answers to the many mysteries of what happens after we pass. As the second day of death arrives, the body continues its natural course of decomposition. By now, the changes are more pronounced. The tissues, having already begun to break down, start to release gases, which causes the body to bloat. This process, known as putrefaction, is the result of bacterial activity that accelerates the breakdown of the body's cells and tissues. The skin becomes discolored, often turning a greenish hue as the blood decomposes and settles in the lower parts of the body due to gravity. The eyes may appear sunken, and the mouth may begin to open as the muscles relax further, revealing the inevitable truth that the body is no longer what it once was. The physical signs of decomposition are unmistakable, but at this point, the soul's journey is thought to be progressing as well. Many spiritual teachings suggest that by the second day, the soul has fully separated from the body, completing its initial transition. In some beliefs, the soul is said to travel toward its final destination, whether that is the afterlife, reincarnation, or some other spiritual plane. It's believed that during this period, the soul might encounter different realms or beings that guide it toward its next phase. These could include angels, ancestors, or divine beings, depending on the religious or spiritual tradition. The second day is also significant in certain cultural and religious practices. In Christianity, for example, there is the belief that the soul's judgment begins soon after death. The body, which is already undergoing its physical decomposition, is viewed as a temporary vessel, while the soul's fate is decided in a higher realm. This judgment is often seen as a time when the soul's deeds are weighed, its actions, thoughts, and intentions during its earthly life. Some believe that this is when the soul encounters the divine and the ultimate decision is made, Will it be granted eternal peace or face consequences for its actions? For those who follow traditions that emphasize the journey of the soul, the second day is often viewed as a time of transition and reflection. In many spiritual frameworks, this is when the soul begins to leave behind any lingering attachments to the physical world. The soul, having witnessed its own passing and observed the reactions of its loved ones, starts to release the emotional and earthly ties that bound it to the physical realm. This release is seen as necessary for the soul to fully accept its new state of being and to move forward on its journey. It may begin to realize that the body is no longer a part of it, that the life it once knew has come to an end. During these first 2 days, while the body undergoes rapid decomposition, the soul's journey continues, moving through different layers of existence. This period is crucial for its transition, as it's believed that the soul must come to terms with its earthly experiences before fully embracing whatever lies ahead. For some, this transition is peaceful, but for others, it's seen as a time of struggle, as the soul may resist leaving behind the familiar world it once knew. From a scientific standpoint, these early stages of decomposition serve as a reminder that life is finite, and the body is simply a temporary vessel. Yet for many, the idea that the soul continues its journey beyond the physical form offers a sense of comfort and hope, reinforcing the belief in a life that extends beyond death. As the body decays and the soul moves on, this time is not just a process of physical breakdown, but a profound and transformative experience that marks the beginning of something eternal. As the days pass and the body undergoes further decomposition, the role of morticians and burial rites becomes an essential part of the process. While the physical changes continue, many cultures and religions place great importance on how the body is handled and prepared for its final resting place. The work of morticians, who embalm the body and prepare it for viewing, is a delicate and sacred responsibility. Their job is not just about preserving the physical remains, but also about ensuring that the body is treated with respect and dignity in accordance with the wishes of the deceased or their family. The embalming process itself is a fascinating and meticulous practice. Morticians use a combination of chemicals to slow down the natural decomposition of the body. This is done to allow for an open casket funeral or to give the family more time for arrangements. The procedure often involves draining the blood and replacing it with embalming fluid, which helps to preserve the body and prevent rapid decomposition. This gives the appearance of the deceased still being lifelike, even though they have already begun their journey into the afterlife. For many families, this moment is one of the final opportunities to say goodbye, to see the person they loved in a state that feels familiar, even though their soul has already moved on. Burial rites, meanwhile, play a crucial role in guiding the soul on its journey. Different religions and spiritual traditions have varying practices, but the common thread among them is the belief that how the body is treated after death impacts the soul's journey. In many Christian traditions, the funeral service is an important ritual for both the deceased and the living. Prayers are said for the soul's peace and passage to the afterlife, often accompanied by hymns and rituals meant to comfort the mourners and help them understand the spiritual significance of the death. In other cultures, such as in Hinduism, the body is often cremated, with the belief that the fire helps to release the soul from its earthly body and propel it toward liberation or rebirth. Similarly, in Islamic traditions, the body is washed, wrapped in a simple cloth, and buried without delay, reflecting the belief that the deceased must be returned to the earth quickly. The body is placed in the ground with the head facing Mecca, symbolizing the soul's connection to God and the spiritual journey that lies ahead. For many, these rituals are not just symbolic acts, but critical moments that ensure the soul is properly guided and protected on its journey. For those who believe in the power of these rituals, they represent more than just a farewell. They are seen as essential steps in ensuring the soul's safe passage to the next realm. In many spiritual frameworks, the soul is believed to need help during its transition, and these rituals serve as a bridge between the physical world and the afterlife. The soul, it's thought, cannot simply go on its journey alone. It needs assistance, both from divine beings and from the community of loved ones who remain behind. Though the physical body is no longer alive, these rituals help to maintain a connection between the living and the dead, offering both comfort and closure. For the soul, the way it is treated after death may have a lasting impact on its journey. Whether through embalming, burial, or cremation, the care taken during this phase reflects the reverence for life and the hope for a peaceful passage into whatever comes next. In the end, burial rites and the work of morticians are a reminder of the importance of honoring the dead, not just for the sake of tradition, but as a way of showing respect for the soul's journey. While the body continues to break down, the spirit is thought to be undergoing its own transformation, and these acts of care and reverence help ensure that the transition is as smooth as possible, marking the final chapter of the person's earthly existence and the beginning of their spiritual journey. By the second day after death, the physical body is continuing its inevitable journey toward decomposition. As the body begins to cool, stiffen, and show signs of decay, many spiritual traditions believe that the soul has started its journey beyond the earthly realm. This marks the beginning of what is often referred to as the soul's transition, a period where the soul moves away from the physical world and enters an unknown spiritual space. While the body is breaking down, the soul is said to be moving toward its final destination, whether that be eternal peace, rebirth, or some other form of spiritual existence. For many, this is the moment when the soul begins to truly leave the physical world behind. In some belief systems, it is during these first few days that the soul is said to linger, hovering between realms. This period is thought to be one of spiritual reflection, where the soul may look back at its earthly existence, reviewing its life and contemplating the choices it made. Some spiritual teachings say that this reflection is a time of cleansing or purification, where the soul may confront its past actions, face judgment, and prepare for what lies ahead. This is often considered a critical time in the spiritual journey, where the soul is believed to be guided by spiritual beings, whether they are angels, ancestors, or other divine figures. In Christian tradition, the second day is often associated with the soul's movement toward its final judgment. While this is not a universally held belief, many Christians view the soul's transition after death as a time of either salvation or damnation. In this view, the soul, after the initial separation from the body, is believed to undergo a process of judgment where its actions on earth are weighed. If the soul has been faithful, it may be welcomed into the presence of God. If not, it is believed to be separated from God and sent to a place of punishment. While this view emphasizes the importance of a soul's relationship with God, the second day, in this sense, is not seen as a literal judgment, but more as a symbolic step toward the final destination of the soul. In other religious systems, such as in Hinduism and Buddhism, the second day after death is thought to be part of the process of reincarnation. The soul, during this time, is believed to enter an intermediate state known as the bardo in Tibetan Buddhism, or antarabhava in Hinduism, where it undergoes a period of rest and reflection before being reborn. It is during this time that the soul may encounter various spiritual beings or experience different realms that will ultimately influence its next incarnation. This transition can be influenced by the soul's past actions, which is why many traditions place great emphasis on the need for proper rituals and prayers during this time. The soul is thought to pass through various stages, moving closer to its new life and eventual liberation. Though these beliefs vary widely across cultures, the idea that the soul is in motion during the second day after death is a common thread. Whether the soul is preparing for judgment, reincarnation, or another form of spiritual existence, the second day is often viewed as a time of transition. It's a time when the soul leaves behind its earthly attachments, moving closer to whatever lies ahead. Even as the body continues its physical decay, the soul's journey is seen as the true focus during these early days. The first 24 to 48 hours are critical for the spiritual path of the soul, as it begins to shed its earthly form and enter a realm that transcends the physical. Whether it is making its way toward peace, judgment, or another life, the soul's transition is believed to be marked by spiritual guides, rituals, and a profound process of self-realization. While the body continues to return to the earth, the soul begins its eternal journey, one that will eventually lead to its final destination. As the third day after death arrives, the process of decomposition continues. But spiritually, many cultures and religious traditions believe this marks an important milestone for the soul. In some traditions, the third day is considered significant because it's seen as the day when the soul begins to fully accept its departure from the physical world and begins its transition into the next phase of existence. For some, this is the moment of ultimate separation, where the soul fully detaches from the body and enters into a state of rest or reflection, free from the earthly realm. In Christianity, the third day holds particular importance as it is associated with resurrection. The idea that Christ rose on the third day after his death has profound theological significance, symbolizing victory over death and the beginning of eternal life. For believers, this day is not just about physical decomposition. It is about the spiritual resurrection or transformation that begins to take shape in the afterlife. In certain spiritual systems, it's believed that the soul, having spent the first few days lingering between worlds, now prepares for its final journey. The third day can be seen as the day when the soul is said to be moving toward its final resting place, whether that's heaven, a new life through reincarnation, or some other spiritual state. The soul may be guided by divine beings, such as angels or ancestors, and may encounter spiritual realms or beings that help it move forward. In these beliefs, the third day is a time of awakening, where the soul begins to shed its last ties to the material world and embraces the peace or clarity that awaits it. For many traditions, the third day is seen as a time of judgment or reckoning. In Christian thought, the soul is believed to undergo a judgment after death, and while this judgment may not be a single, specific event, the third day may symbolize the soul's beginning to accept its fate. The soul's actions, beliefs, and life choices are thought to be reviewed in this time, and the direction of its journey becomes more defined. While the soul may not face its final destination immediately, the third day is seen as a time when the soul's future is shaped by its past actions. The weight of these decisions may begin to manifest, guiding the soul toward its ultimate resting place. In some traditions, especially those focused on reincarnation or karmic cycles, the third day represents a time when the soul is close to entering its next life. The soul, having completed its reflection, judgment, and purification, prepares to enter a new incarnation. This could mean a rebirth into another body, continuing the cycle of life and death. The actions taken in previous lives are believed to influence the circumstances of the soul's next existence. During this time, the soul is said to be preparing for its return to the material world, ready to begin anew. In other spiritual frameworks, the third day is viewed as a moment of connection between the soul and the divine. In many cultures, it's believed that the soul is reunited with its creator or higher power. This reunion may be marked by profound peace, a sense of understanding, or the feeling of being fully embraced by divine love. For those who believe in an afterlife where the soul enters into eternal peace or heaven, this day represents the soul's final preparation to enter into the presence of God or a higher spiritual being. While the body continues to undergo its natural processes of decay, the soul's journey on the third day is often one of deep transformation. Whether preparing for judgment, reincarnation, or divine reunion, the third day symbolizes a moment of awakening and spiritual clarity. It is a turning point where the soul begins to fully realize its eternal nature and prepares for whatever lies beyond the physical world. In this way, the third day is not just a measure of time, but a significant spiritual event, marking the soul's readiness to move on from the earthly plane. By the fourth and fifth days after death, the body has continued its steady process of decomposition. The signs of decay are more visible now. The skin, once smooth and taut, is now deeply discolored, and the gases from putrefaction cause the body to bloat. The tissues begin to liquefy, and the distinct smell of decay is unmistakable. Yet in spiritual terms, these days represent a quiet period for the soul, where the frenetic energy of transition begins to slow down. This is a time when, according to many spiritual traditions, the soul is in a state of rest and waiting, having already passed through the initial stages of transition. During these 2 days, the soul is often believed to be in a state of reflection or purification, but it is no longer in the turmoil of the early stages of its journey. Instead, it is thought to be moving toward a greater sense of peace. In many religious teachings, these are days of calm, where the soul is given time to rest, heal, and prepare for what lies ahead. The soul, free from the constraints of its earthly body, may be at peace, contemplating its life's journey, reconciling with its past, or undergoing a form of purification that prepares it for its final destination. This period is also sometimes seen as a time for the soul to reflect on its life's actions and their consequences, making amends for past wrongs, either with divine assistance or through an internal process of understanding and acceptance. For those who believe in the concept of the soul's ultimate union with God or a divine source, the fourth and fifth days are often viewed as a time when the soul is drawing closer to its creator. The soul is said to enter a state of peaceful anticipation, where it becomes increasingly ready to move into a state of eternal rest, awaiting final acceptance into divine presence. In Christianity, for example, the soul may be approaching the gates of heaven, preparing to receive divine judgment, which is not seen as punishment but as a final act of divine mercy and grace. For others who believe in reincarnation, these days may be when the soul is in a preparatory state before entering its next life, ensuring that it has learned the necessary lessons from its past existence. These days, marked by stillness and peace, are a stark contrast to the earlier moments of death. The soul is no longer caught in the whirlwind of transition, confusion, or detachment. Instead, it is in a space where it can come to terms with its earthly existence, understanding its place in the larger cosmos. Many spiritual beliefs suggest that the fourth and fifth days are a time of rest, where the soul can find solace, clarity, and readiness for its next steps, whether that's ascending to a higher state, reincarnating into a new form, or entering into eternal peace. At the same time, the physical body continues its inevitable return to nature. As the decomposition process moves forward, the body's cells continue to break down. While this may seem like a purely biological event, many spiritual frameworks view it as a sacred return to the earth. The body, which was once a vessel for the soul, now returns to the earth, its elements breaking down and rejoining the natural cycle. Some cultures believe that this process is an important part of the soul's journey, with the body's return to the earth symbolizing the soul's release from the material world. In both physical and spiritual terms, the fourth and fifth days after death serve as a quiet and reflective period for the soul. The soul has transitioned from the initial shock of death to a more peaceful state of understanding. It's a time when the soul, whether moving toward judgment, reincarnation, or divine reunion, is in a phase of rest and preparation, awaiting the next phase of its eternal journey. The body may continue to decay, but spiritually, these days represent a moment of stillness, where the soul is gently guided forward on its path. By the sixth day, the process of decomposition has reached a more advanced stage. The body, once a lifeless shell, has continued to break down, and the visible signs of decay are now unmistakable. The skin has taken on a further pallor, and the internal gases continue to expand, causing the body to bloat more. The odor of decomposition is stronger, and the natural breakdown of the body's tissues and organs is in full force. Yet despite the body's return to the earth, many believe that the soul is entering a stage of acceptance. During these days, the soul is thought to begin to reconcile its past actions, finding peace as it prepares for the final stages of its journey. In spiritual terms, the sixth day marks a shift in the soul's transition. Having passed through the initial stages of reflection and purification, the soul is now seen as moving closer to a final understanding of its journey. For some, this is a moment when the soul accepts its fate, whether that means ascending to a higher plane, entering into eternal rest, or continuing its cycle of reincarnation. It's believed that the soul begins to let go of its attachment to the material world, no longer bound by earthly concerns or the emotions of those it left behind. This is a time of peace, where the soul is no longer weighed down by the burdens of its past life, but is instead at ease with its spiritual path. In many spiritual traditions, the sixth day is viewed as a time when the soul's fate is sealed. It is said to be a moment when the soul is either confirmed for eternal peace, or, in some beliefs, when it faces the consequences of its earthly actions. While this judgment may not be immediate, the sixth day marks a time when the soul is fully detached from the earthly realm and is moving toward its spiritual goal. Whether that means moving toward a state of divine peace, returning to the cycle of rebirth, or facing judgment, the soul's journey takes on a sense of resolution. For those who believe in reincarnation, the sixth day is thought to be a period when the soul is preparing for its next life. It is said to be a time when the soul undergoes its final purification and is ready to enter the next phase of existence, shedding its old form and preparing to be reborn into a new body. In some traditions, this is also the time when the soul may encounter spiritual beings who help guide it toward its next incarnation, ensuring that it has learned the lessons it needs in order to move forward in the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The sixth day is also a time of transition in the sense that the soul is said to be approaching its final reunion with the divine, or with its creator. In Christianity, for example, many believe that this is the time when the soul comes closer to the eternal presence of God, preparing to be welcomed into heaven. For those who follow other spiritual paths, the sixth day is often seen as the point when the soul is about to experience ultimate peace, freedom from suffering, and eternal joy. While the body continues its physical decline, the soul is thought to be moving into a more serene and accepting state. The sixth day represents a critical turning point, a moment when the soul has fully processed its past, understood its place in the universe, and is now ready for the next step in its spiritual journey. Whether that's moving toward divine peace, rebirth, or eternal rest, this day represents a sense of resolution and acceptance, where the soul is free from the weight of earthly existence and is ready to embrace its true nature. In this way, the sixth day is not only a moment of spiritual growth, but also a time of great peace, as the soul comes closer to its final destination, whatever that may be. By the seventh day, the body has completed much of its physical transition. The decomposition process, now in full swing, has caused the body to break down to its most basic elements. The skin, once vibrant, is now discolored and fragile, and the internal organs have mostly liquefied. The decomposition process is a natural part of the life cycle, returning the body to the earth from which it came. Yet spiritually, the seventh day marks a final turning point for the soul. It is often regarded as the day when the soul reaches its ultimate state of transition. The body, having returned to the earth, is no longer an anchor to the material world. The soul, free from its earthly confines, is on the brink of moving into its final spiritual destination. For many spiritual traditions, the seventh day is a day of culmination. It's the final moment of the soul's journey before it fully enters into its eternal state. The soul, having passed through reflection, judgment, purification, and acceptance, is now ready to experience the fruits of its transition. In some belief systems, this is seen as the day when the soul fully enters the afterlife or ascends to a higher plane of existence. The soul is said to be free from the bonds of earthly attachments, no longer burdened by the physical form, and ready to experience divine peace or eternal rest. In Christianity, the seventh day carries significant meaning, not just as a day of rest, but also as a symbol of divine fulfillment. It is the day of completion, mirroring the rest that God took after creating the world. The seventh day, in this context, represents the final completion of the soul's journey. It is the time when the soul is believed to enter into eternal communion with God, resting in peace after its earthly struggles. For many, this day marks the end of suffering and the beginning of eternal peace, a reunion with the divine after a life lived in faith. For those who adhere to reincarnation or cyclical views of life, the seventh day is viewed as the conclusion of one cycle and the potential beginning of another. The soul, now fully released from its former life, is ready to return to the cycle of birth and rebirth. This period marks the end of the soul's past existence and prepares it for a new life. In some traditions, the seventh day is considered a time when the soul, having learned from its past experiences, is ready to move on to a new incarnation, where it will continue its journey of growth and evolution. In many cultures, the seventh day is also seen as a moment of divine grace. It is a day when the soul's journey is completed and it is fully embraced by divine love or understanding. This is often viewed as the soul's final homecoming, whether it's to God, the universe, or the higher self. It is the culmination of the soul's journey, a moment of ultimate peace and fulfillment. Whether it's entering heaven, achieving spiritual liberation, or becoming one with the cosmos, the seventh day symbolizes the soul's entry into its eternal state. The seventh day after death is a significant spiritual milestone, not just because of the physical changes that the body has undergone, but because it marks the soul's final step into a new form of existence. The body may have returned to the earth, but the soul has moved beyond the physical realm, completing its transition into whatever comes next. For some, this is the final step into eternal peace. For others, it is a moment of rebirth and renewal. Regardless of the specifics, the seventh day represents the end of the earthly journey and the beginning of the soul's eternal journey, a journey that transcends time, space, and the limits of human understanding. It is a day of completion, the moment when the soul is fully at rest, ready for the next stage of its existence. As the seventh day passes, the soul's journey doesn't necessarily end, but rather enters into a phase of uncertainty and mystery. For many, what happens after the seventh day is one of the greatest spiritual mysteries. Some believe that the soul continues its path toward final peace or judgment, while others think that the soul lingers in an intermediate state before fully transitioning into its next form of existence. This unknown phase leaves room for various interpretations, depending on one's spiritual or religious perspective. In many religious and spiritual beliefs, the concept of an afterlife is deeply tied to the idea of the soul's eternal journey. While the body decays and returns to the earth, the soul is believed to undergo a process of final transformation. This may involve the soul continuing on its journey through different realms or stages. For some, this stage after the seventh day is referred to as limbo, or an intermediate state, where the soul remains in a waiting period, sometimes for eternity, until its ultimate fate is determined. In these traditions, the soul is not immediately judged or sent to its final destination, but instead remains in a place where it is purified or prepared for its true fate. For others, particularly in Christian and Islamic beliefs, this period is thought to be when the soul's ultimate judgment is finalized. In these traditions, the seventh day could be seen as the completion of an initial process, where the soul is now fully separated from its earthly attachments and prepared to face God's judgment. This might involve either an eternal reward in heaven or a separation from divine presence, hell, or a form of spiritual punishment. In this context, after the seventh day, the soul would enter its final resting place, determined by the life it led and the choices it made during its time on earth. In reincarnation beliefs, the period after the seventh day could symbolize a form of spiritual preparation for the next cycle of life. While the first stages of the soul's journey have been completed, it may still need to undergo a final process of cleansing or realization before returning to the physical world. In some traditions, the soul is believed to take on new experiences, reincarnating in a new body or form, bringing forward the lessons from past lives. The period after the seventh day, then, may be seen as a moment when the soul is fully cleansed and ready to enter a new life. Yet in many traditions that focus on the soul's reunion with the divine, this stage can be understood as the soul's final release from the physical realm. It is no longer bound by time or space, and it enters into a state of pure existence. This phase is seen as one of ultimate peace, where the soul experiences divine communion, liberation, or oneness with the universe. This form of eternal peace is seen by many as the soul's final destination, one that transcends earthly experience and enters into the presence of a higher power. This unknown phase after the seventh day raises profound questions about the soul's destiny. It's a time of mystery that many spiritual traditions explore in various ways, depending on their beliefs about life after death. For some, it is a time of eternal rest, when the soul enters its final destination, a place of eternal peace or divine union. For others, it is a time of waiting and purification, where the soul is being prepared for its next stage in the cycle of existence, whether that's reincarnation or further judgment. What happens after the seventh day remains one of the great spiritual mysteries, one that each person and tradition approaches from their unique perspective, hoping to understand the deeper nature of life, death, and what comes after. The soul's journey after death is both an end and a beginning, one that continues to intrigue and inspire as humanity seeks to understand the nature of the afterlife and its place within the cosmos. The importance of understanding death, particularly the journey the soul undergoes after the body has ceased to live, cannot be overstated. For those left behind, contemplating the process of death and what happens in the days following it can provide profound comfort, clarity, and even purpose. While we may not know for certain what lies beyond this life, understanding the transition that the soul makes from the physical realm to the next gives many a sense of peace, helping them process the grief of losing a loved one. One of the most significant reasons for contemplating the journey after death is the perspective it brings about the meaning of life itself. When we think about the process of death, particularly the transition that occurs in the first 7 days, we are reminded of the fragility of life and the importance of how we live while we are here. Spiritual teachings about death often emphasize the need to live with intention, to make choices that align with our highest values, and to prepare ourselves for the inevitable, knowing that death is not the end, but a transition. This awareness can inspire us to live with greater purpose, fostering deeper connections with others, seeking personal growth, and aligning ourselves with our spiritual beliefs. In many religious traditions, death is seen not as something to fear, but as an opportunity for transformation and renewal. The soul's journey, whether toward eternal peace, reincarnation, or some form of spiritual cleansing, is viewed as an essential part of the cycle of existence. By understanding the process that the soul undergoes after death, many people are able to cultivate a sense of peace with the natural course of life. Instead of fearing death, they are encouraged to embrace it as a part of the divine order, knowing that it is not the end, but a transition into a new stage of existence. Furthermore, contemplating the first 7 days after death can encourage a deeper appreciation for the present moment. If the soul's journey is as significant as spiritual traditions suggest, it reminds us to make the most of the time we have while alive. It's easy to get caught up in the busyness of daily life, forgetting that the time we have is finite. By focusing on how the soul transitions after death, we are prompted to examine the life we lead. Are we making choices that reflect our true values? Are we spending our time in ways that truly matter? Understanding that life is brief and death inevitable encourages a sense of urgency to live fully, with intention, compassion, and awareness. At the same time, understanding the journey of the soul can bring comfort in times of loss. When a loved one passes, knowing that their soul is transitioning into something beyond this world can offer a sense of peace. Many spiritual teachings emphasize that death is not a permanent separation, but rather a temporary parting. The soul's journey continues, and the love shared between people is not lost as it transcends the physical realm. This understanding can help those who are grieving to find solace, knowing that the connection with their loved one remains, even if in a different form. In addition, contemplating the transition after death invites reflection on our own spiritual beliefs and values. Whether we follow a particular religious tradition or hold personal spiritual beliefs, the question of what happens after death challenges us to consider the larger meaning of life and death. It forces us to confront our own mortality and to examine what we believe about the soul's journey. For some, this brings clarity and a sense of purpose. For others, it may spark a deeper curiosity or spiritual awakening. The journey the soul undergoes after death serves as a reminder that there is more to life than the physical body. While the body is the vessel we inhabit during our time on earth, it is not the true essence of who we are. Understanding death as a transition rather than an end can help us reconnect with our spiritual selves and consider the long-term impact of the way we live. Whether we believe in an afterlife, reincarnation, or another spiritual path, The awareness that life is not limited to our physical existence offers a deeper understanding of both life and death. And in that understanding, we can find the comfort, purpose, and peace that allow us to live our lives with greater meaning. As the process of death and the journey of the soul continue to unfold, one of the most important aspects to reflect upon is the unknown nature of what happens after the seventh day. While many spiritual traditions offer insights into the soul's journey, what comes after the final transition remains one of life's greatest mysteries. This uncertainty is both unsettling and comforting in its own way. It challenges us to explore deeper truths about the nature of existence, the afterlife, and the meaning of life itself. It forces us to grapple with the unknowable, which can be a humbling experience. In many ways, the unknown after the seventh day reminds us that there is so much about life and death that we may never fully understand. The belief in what comes after death varies widely among different cultures and religions, and each view offers a unique perspective. For some, the idea of eternal peace in heaven, spiritual reunion with loved ones, or liberation from suffering is a source of comfort. For others, the mystery itself becomes a space of hope, where the possibility of something greater than we can comprehend lies just beyond our reach. The ambiguity of this final phase serves to remind us that our understanding of the universe, death, and the soul's journey is incomplete, and that this very lack of certainty is part of the beauty of the human experience. This mystery invites us to live our lives in a way that acknowledges the unknown. It teaches us that the journey of the soul doesn't follow a fixed path, but instead is shaped by our actions, beliefs, and the experiences we gather throughout our lives. The afterlife, whatever form it takes, is often portrayed as a reflection of how we live our earthly lives. Our choices, our relationships, our acts of kindness or cruelty, and our spiritual growth all influence where our soul may go after death. Whether that journey is a reunion with the divine, a return to the cycle of rebirth, or a final resting place in eternal peace, the path is thought to be shaped by how we live now. Furthermore, the uncertainty of what lies beyond the seventh day calls us to embrace the present moment. If there is one certainty in life, it's that we will all face death one day. And if we accept that the ultimate destination of the soul is unknown, we are reminded that our focus should be on the life we live today. It's a call to make every moment meaningful, to treat others with kindness, to seek peace, and to pursue spiritual growth, knowing that these actions are what ultimately shape the soul's path. The unknown, after the seventh day, also serves as a profound reminder of the limitations of human understanding. It challenges our need for certainty and control, offering instead the beauty of mystery and the unknown. While we may never fully know what happens after death, we are given the gift of curiosity, the chance to explore our beliefs and understandings, and to find peace in our individual journeys. This uncertainty, far from being something to fear, can serve as a catalyst for personal transformation, prompting us to live more authentically, deeply, and intentionally. As we reflect on the soul's journey after death, we are also invited to consider how we confront our own mortality. The more we understand the mystery of death, the more we are called to embrace life with gratitude and purpose. We may not have the answers to the questions about what happens after the seventh day, but we do have the opportunity to make our lives meaningful in the here and now. And in doing so, we prepare our souls for whatever comes next, knowing that the journey, whether filled with answers or mystery, is an integral part of the spiritual path. Understanding the journey of the soul after death is not only an exploration of the physical and spiritual processes, but also a deep reflection on the purpose of life itself. It challenges us to reconsider our priorities, our relationships, and our values. As we ponder the final days after death, we are confronted with the reality that life is finite and that each moment we have on this earth is precious. This understanding can profoundly shift the way we live, encouraging us to focus on what truly matters, to live with compassion, and to leave behind a legacy that reflects our highest ideals. In many ways, contemplating the soul's journey after death provides clarity on how to live a meaningful life. The first 7 days after death, with their physical, emotional, and spiritual dimensions, underscore the importance of living with intention and mindfulness. If we understand that our actions, our love, and our spiritual practices are what shape the soul's path after death, it can inspire us to live more fully and more consciously. By reflecting on the fact that our time here is limited, we are reminded to make the most of each day, to cherish our relationships, and to live in alignment with our core values. This awareness also invites us to reflect on the nature of suffering and transformation. If death is a process of transition, and the soul's journey is shaped by what we experience in life, then suffering too can be viewed as a part of this transformation. Instead of seeing suffering as something to be avoided or feared, many spiritual traditions teach that it is through hardship that the soul grows, learns, and purifies. The soul's experiences during life, both the joys and the sorrows, are what ultimately shape its path in the afterlife. Understanding this can give us a different perspective on our struggles, encouraging us to face them with resilience, knowing that they are part of a larger process of growth. As we reflect on the days after death, it's also important to recognize the value of connection, both with others and with our own spiritual selves. The way we live impacts not only our own journey, but also the journeys of those around us. Our love, kindness, and understanding create ripples that extend beyond our lives. As we consider the first days after death, we are reminded that our relationships, whether with family, friends, or even strangers, are integral to our spiritual growth. By nurturing these relationships, we are shaping not just our own souls, but also the souls of those we encounter along the way. The finality of death, while difficult to accept, can ultimately bring a sense of peace. The certainty that all living things must eventually pass encourages us to live more authentically, to be present in our lives, and to prioritize the things that matter most. It calls us to focus on love, compassion, and spiritual growth, knowing that these are the things that will accompany us on our journey, whether it's in this life or beyond. In the end, understanding the first 7 days after death invites us to embrace both life and death with open hearts. It teaches us that death is not an end, but a transition, a step in a larger, more profound journey. Whether we believe in an afterlife, reincarnation, or something else entirely, the soul's journey remains a central part of the human experience. And by living with awareness, love, and purpose, we can ensure that the path we walk in life shapes the journey that lies ahead, whatever that may be.